The endless debate between Sonic the Hedgehog and Dragon Ball fans continues to rage on. Did Sonic rip off Dragon Ball? It could just be homages. Maybe everything's just a coincidence. Well, I've come to find that whether there's evidence to support these claims or not, these discussions just never seem to stop. If you're here to listen to me talk about the similarities between Super Sonic and Super Saiyan Goku and the Chaos Emeralds and the Dragon Balls, I won't be going into that here today. I've actually made a video on this subject before where I go in depth with what I believe are nods to Dragon Ball in the Sonic franchise, so if you haven't seen that before, be sure to check it out. Since then, there's been some big new info that came out, hence why I'm here today with a follow-up. Plus, there were a couple of other things I didn't get to mention in my original video, so I thought I'd like to take that opportunity to talk about them more here. This is part 2 in my series on how Dragon Ball Z changed Sonic the Hedgehog. Before I get started, I want to take a moment to thank my channel members. This video shout out goes to Doomhorse. Thanks for always coming around our streams, Doom. We really appreciate you, man. And if you'd like to have your name featured here and also have a possible shout out, please consider becoming a member by hitting the join button. Also, thank you to my patrons too. The support means a lot and it allows me to keep creating content. Even if you can't become a member or a patron, please make sure you subscribe and hit that bell. It all helps so much. And without further ado, let's get back to the video. After I uploaded my original video a couple of months ago, I got a lot of thoughtful and engaging comments. Lots of you are very passionate about Sonic and Dragon Ball, just like me, and I'd love to see it. First of all, I want to make it clear, I do not think that Sonic copied Dragon Ball. I think it clearly took inspiration from it and other franchises, and you know what, there's nothing wrong with that. Even series that inspired Sonic, like Dragon Ball and Star Wars, took concepts and ideas from other works before them. Imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery, after all. One of the big things I didn't mention in my original video was Surge and Kit from the IDW Sonic comics being compared to artificial humans 17 and 18 from Dragon Ball. Surge and Kit are two beings who were cybernetically enhanced by Dr. Starline for the sole purpose of killing Sonic and Tails, and effectively taking their place. This seems to be yet another clear pull from Dragon Ball, as 17 and 18 were also cybernetically enhanced humans made for the sole purpose of killing Son Goku. Dr. Starline's role here very much mirrors that of Dr. Gero, a mad scientist who worked for the Red Ribbon Army that Goku destroyed as a child. After that, he worked on developing several artificial humans that could be strong enough to avenge the Red Ribbon Army by killing Goku once and for all. Personally, 17 and 18 are some of my all-time favorite Dragon Ball characters, so it's really cool to see their influence in the Sonic franchise. In my last video, I mentioned that the Werehog is technically more similar to Luffy from One Piece than the Ozaru from Dragon Ball. Because of this, I got some comments saying that Hypersonic is similar to Gear 5th, implying that this awakened form for Luffy is inspired by Hypersonic in some kind of way. I don't think that this is the case, as the two are nothing alike. I think that the only reason why this comparison is made sometimes is because Gear 5th is often compared to Super Saiyans, and Supersonic is compared to Super Saiyans as well. Sure, the default color for Hypersonic in still images tends to be white, but I think that's because it's difficult to display all of the flashing colors being represented at once. In my opinion, artists who choose to represent it with slight gradients or sequin coloring have the right idea, and it would be more accurate to Hypersonic as a whole as well. Besides the fact that Hypersonic's first appearance was in 1994 and Gear 5th was in 2022, we can't ignore that Gear 5th and Hypersonic are nothing alike in terms of abilities. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and confidently say that the two have nothing to do with one another. Another point I'd like to touch base on before I move on to the big subject of today's video is Super Sonic 2. This form isn't called that outright, but in Sonic Frontiers' files, it's named as such, which is why I called it that in the previous video. This form can also go by the name Starfall Supersonic, which I think sounds cooler and more original, but the fact that Super Sonic 2, as a name, was used in the game's data can't be ignored. The subtle change in appearance, along with sparks of electricity and similar nomenclature in the naming, was something I felt was worth pointing out. Plus, the fact that it technically has 2 official names is sort of like how Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan Blue are 2 official names that refer to the same form. Now, the big one. Very recently, head of Sonic Team Takashi Iizuka had an interview where he talked about the similarities between Shadow the Hedgehog and Dragon Ball's Vegeta, or lack thereof. Iizuka stresses that even though fans claim that Shadow is basically the Vegeta of the Sonic franchise, that is far from Sonic Team's intention. Iizuka went on to say, Vegeta really starts out as an enemy and then later becomes a friend and an ally and kind of, like, fights for justice and trying to save the world and whatnot. Shadow is not like that. I never want him to be like that. Shadow is doing his own thing. He's not friends with Sonic, and he's gonna go off and, do whatever he feels is correct or right, or what he needs to do. And it's not like, well, okay, we used to be enemies, but we're friends now. Let's save the world. He's not that kind of character, and I don't want him to be that kind of character. So when people are always online saying, oh, it's Vegeta, it's like, it's not Vegeta. Alright, there's a lot to unpack here. It's clear that Iizuka does not like when people compare Shadow to Vegeta. I've already touched upon why many people reached that conclusion in my original video. But to sum it up here, it's because Shadow is basically the darker, edgier Sonic. They have similar abilities, but they greatly contrast in terms of personality. Vegeta is actually like this when compared to Goku. And there's more coincidences too, like both Shadow and Vegeta tend to keep to themselves, and they're both also incredibly stubborn. Iizuka mentions how Vegeta originally starts out as a villain, and this is true, but he doesn't really become a good guy until the very end of Dragon Ball Z. He's the big bad in the Saiyan saga, a bad guy turned reluctant ally in the Frieza saga, an arrogant asshole that just gets in everyone's way in the Cell saga, and finally, in the Buu saga, we get to see him transition to being good. Hell, this change technically starts happening off-screen during the 7-year time skip after Gohan killed Cell. This time period gave Vegeta time to reflect on who he is and what his values are, and since Goku is dead, the lack of competition allowed him to settle down and enjoy life on Earth with his family and newfound friends. It was only once Goku came back did Vegeta realize how much he's changed, and it really bugged him how the once revered Prince of all Saiyans became a house bitch. Which is why he allowed Babidi to take him over, as an excuse to regress to his old, feral ways. But what Vegeta didn't realize in that moment is that he didn't want to be evil again. He just wanted to justify his existence. And that existence is competition. And his competition is with Goku. Vegeta lives to fight. And without a proper fight, he has no purpose. But during this fight with Goku, he realized he had a new purpose. Once Vegeta sacrificed himself for his loved ones, I feel like that's when he truly was cemented as a good guy. So that's Vegeta's journey from bad guy to good guy, and how does this compare to Shadow? Well, Shadow never goes through an arc quite like this. Dragon Ball heavily benefited from being a weekly serialized manga with an ongoing story, which allowed the characters to grow and change, whereas the Sonic franchise is mostly homogenous. Shadow had his own arc, sure, but it was mostly about his origins and dealing with trauma and loss. Vegeta and Shadow couldn't be any more different in this regard. Vegeta never really has to deal with loss or themes of trauma, besides sort of being influenced by Frieza while under his rule. Vegeta still would have been evil, with or without Frieza, and he took pride in the power that he gained while working under Frieza. Just to really demonstrate how much Vegeta's changed from this, later on in the Moro arc of Dragon Ball Super, Vegeta definitely regrets his past actions, and he tries to atone for his sins, such as protecting the Namekians who are now under a new threat, a race that he once needlessly had a huge hand in slaughtering. Vegeta and Shadow are both rebellious. Vegeta was a tool for Frieza, and Shadow was a tool for Gerald Robotnik and Black Doom. But both rebelled for their own different reasons. Vegeta rebelled because he originally wanted to usurp the tyrant who originally had him under his thumb, and Shadow rebelled because he wanted to save the world with his own idea of justice. Vegeta knew exactly what he was doing, and reluctantly tried to not be influenced by Goku's good-hearted nature. Shadow, on the other hand, without hesitation joined Sonic's side to save the very world he wanted to destroy, once he remembered what his true mission was. Vegeta ended up working with the heroes reluctantly once he realized that that was the only way to save his own ass. Vegeta, especially early on, was an opportunist, blinded by his own ego, and his growth in the series is one of my all-time favorites. For the majority of Dragon Ball's run, Vegeta only fought for himself. Shadow, on the other hand, regardless of his allegiance, he was almost always fighting for someone else. Shadow has always been selfless, a dude with a heart, albeit a broken one. So when we take a deep dive into what makes up each of these characters, Iizuka is right in saying that these two are nothing alike. Thematically though, especially when broken down to archetypes, yeah, Shadow is pretty much the Vegeta to Sonic's Goku. Not because of who Vegeta is, but rather the role that he plays with Goku. The way that Shadow and Sonic interact is similar to that of the two Saiyans. The way that they're similar yet different, the way that they work together. These things all mirror Dragon Ball, whether Iizuka wants it to or not. It could also simply be because Sonic and Shadow's relationship has a very shonen dynamic, with the protagonist and rival and whatnot, so Iizuka can't really expect people to not make surface level comparisons to Dragon Ball, especially when Super Sonic and the 7 Chaos Emeralds exist. I think Iizuka should loosen up and kind of embrace the comparisons, because once you sit down to really think about the differences, yeah, they aren't really alike, but at the same time, they have a lot in common. And that's pretty much all I have to say for now. And you know what? I will gladly make another video on this subject once we inevitably get more information or more parallels between Sonic and Dragon Ball in the future. What about you though? Do you think Shadow and Vegeta are alike, or do you think they're very different as well? How do you feel about knowing that Iizuka hates it when people compare Shadow to Vegeta? Coincidentally, I've got a video essay on Shadow coming up real soon, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell for more content. Matane! Hey guys, if you like the thumbnail art I've been making, be sure to check out me and Axel Lasley's shop, pencilpunch.com. There we have stickers and posters of our art up for sale. The link is down in the description. Okay, for real this time, matane.